Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Orion here, and today for this video we are going to be reviewing something that I have been waiting a very long time for, ever since we got that first reveal and that first tease of whatever this was going to be. I have been super excited, and that is for Star Wars Visions, which is, if you don't know, it's the new series, I guess you could call it, coming from Star Wars and Lucasfilm, that is essentially Star Wars' version and their take on anime. And little background for me, I am not very well versed in the anime universe. Let's just say that I don't watch anime. And so this series, in a way, honestly, it could have gone south for me, quite potentially. Like, you never really know. This series could have gone south for me as far as how I took it in and how I could have perceived it by the time that I finished watching every episode. And I have to be honest with you guys, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I really did thoroughly enjoy this. Now, to be clear, that does not mean, and also, by the way, I might be talking spoilers potentially throughout this as we talk through all 9 episodes that were released for season 1. And also, guys, if you enjoyed the series, please sure to like and subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, leave that like and subscribe. Comment down below, what did you guys think of the series? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Were there episodes that you like versus others that maybe were not the greatest? I want to hear what you have to say down below. So please comment down below. Tell me what you thought about this series. And so let's just start talking about it. And I honestly think I'm going to go through every episode. And they were very short episodes, and I was kind of shocked to see that, because before going into the series, I actually really didn't know what to expect as far as how long each would be, or if these were like separate, like different, like long elongated movies or something like that. I had no idea what they were going to do. And so once I found out that it was going to be an entire season of television, essentially television, it's not necessarily television. These episodes almost feel like short films in a way. It's like their own short film. And honestly, I don't really have a problem with that, to be honest. I think whatever time that you need to tell the story in, as long as it works, then I'm totally cool with it. And I think just about for every single episode, the time and length that each one was, I think it worked. And so starting off with the first episode, which is The Duel, this one is by far one of my favorites. Out of the entire first season, this is one of my favorites. And I think, honestly, this was a really strong way to kick it off. If you wanted to kick off a series like this to show off something new that you've never done before, The Duel is the best way to start it off. In my personal opinion, this is the best way to start it off. So essentially, the synopsis is: a wandering stranger with a mysterious past defends a village from powerful bandits. And, you know, these episodes are going to have like their own mythology to them. And to be clear, this series is not in any way connected to the main Star Wars universe. This is its own thing. It's kind of like a multiverse thing in a way, if you think. It's kind of like different branches of different universes and how they went about their own version of Star Wars. And so each episode is kind of doing its own thing. And there are certain things, to be clear, there are certain things that are in each episode that are from actual Star Wars. For example, and we'll talk about that with the second episode, Boba Fett's in this show, in this season. He's in an episode in this season. And so they kind of cherry pick a lot of things that come from the real Star Wars that we know, and they put it in here. And so The Duel is about this stranger, I guess you could say, who nobody really knows who he is. And in this episode, he has to take back a village. And once we figure out who he's up against and who he's fighting, which are these rogue bandits of, I think it's First Order stormtroopers, who are basically on the run after the war, and which is the war and the sequels, to be clear. And he comes across this group of bandits, and they find out that he is, no, not a Jedi, because he has Force abilities, but he is, I don't think he's a Sith. I mean, he said I think he said in the episode that he is not of Sith origin, but he is hunting down, from the looks of it, other Sith acolytes or other red lightsaber using people, like, out in the universe, as he's got like a bunch of kyber crystals that are red in his robe. And so basically he goes through this episode and he frees this village of these bandits and this rogue other, not Jedi, but Sith looking person, and he takes them all out and he frees the village. And that's essentially episode 1. Episode 2 is a little different. And to be clear, this is probably maybe my least favorite episode, if we're being honest. I could not really get into this episode. I thought the concept, while yes, I see what they were trying to go for, I just don't think it worked. I personally do not think the concept of what they were going for with this episode, it just didn't, it did not work for me. It's essentially like a rock band version of Star Wars. I could not get pulled into it. Now, this is the episode, as I mentioned earlier, this is the one with Boba Fett in it. And I like that. I think that part of it was actually pretty cool. I like that they included Boba Fett in this. And also Jabba the Hutt is in this episode as well, which is also pretty cool, along with his buddy Bib Fortuna. And you know, I thought that was a cool tie-in a little bit, even though I didn't personally like what they did with the episode. And so that was episode 2. And funny enough, it's called Tatooine Rhapsody, which, if you don't know, Bohemian Rhapsody is the song, is one of the songs of the band Queen in real life, and I kind of see what they did there with the episode title. So now moving on to episode 3, which is The Twins. Now this is also one of my favorite episodes. And essentially, the premise of this episode is basically a different telling of the Luke and Leia story, and how those two are essentially a part of the same family. And it's these two twins, brother and sister, who are on the same side at first, but then the brother goes against the sister and tries to like go to the light side and not the dark side, which the sister is on. And in the end, they have a fight, they fight each other, and you know, it's a really cool battle, I will say, and it ends in a really cool way. Now, I don't like The Last Jedi, and the way this episode ends, it basically reenacts the scene from The Last Jedi where Holdo and her ship hyperspace through the First Order ships. And they did it in a way that's very different than how they did it in The Last Jedi, which I actually kind of liked. And essentially the episode ends off with the brother defeating the sister and the brother landing on a desert planet. How funny is that? And basically saying like, hey, I gotta find my true purpose, and I also gotta go and find my sister, which is essentially the retelling of the Luke and Leia storyline from episode 4, A New Hope. And you know, I thought that was pretty cool, the way that they went about doing that. And now episode 4, which is The Village Bride. And The Village Bride is, it's a unique episode, I will say. Now, the story of this episode is a little bit clunky in a way. It meshes two different stories with one another. Basically, the story is that there's this village that's being, you know, controlled by these raiders or whoever they are, and people are getting taken away, and it's kind of weird the way the story meshes together. And there's the other story, which is about this girl, and she used to be a Jedi. And that's essentially what the synopsis of the episode is. A Jedi on the run takes in the unique customs of a remote village under threat of a warlord. And essentially, as like every other episode, there's going to be a fight, and it's between this Jedi and the Raiders. And I thought it was really cool that the way they went about doing the fight scenes in this one too. The Jedi, the girl, I think she was pretty dope in this episode, so I like that a little bit. Even if I didn't find that the stories meshed well together, you know, I did think that they did some good stuff in this episode. And so there's not much more to really talk about with this episode, so let's just move on to the 5th one now. And now the 5th episode, now this is my favorite episode. This is by far and none my favorite episode of the entire first season, the Ninth Jedi, which is about the daughter of a lightsaber smith, so essentially a blacksmith, but in Star Wars, and is pursued by dark forces while on a dangerous mission. Now, this episode is very coherent and very precise on how it tells the story of this person, this girl, who is the daughter of a lightsaber smith, who is essentially creating these lightsabers for these Jedi who are, some of the last Jedi out there, I guess, if that's what was implied in the episode. And so she has to deliver these lightsabers after her father was taken away by these what are called Jedi hunters. And I thought that was a pretty cool concept. And she's able to get away and deliver these lightsabers to all these Jedi until she doesn't realize that they're not Jedi and that they're actually Sith acolytes, or at least most of them are. And they come up against this robot who is actually not really a robot, but there's like a person inside who is what's called the Margrave. And he's essentially the leader of all these Jedi, or Sith acolytes, until they reveal themselves to be Sith acolytes. And they turn on this Margrave guy, and they fight against this girl and this other dude who essentially is on the light side of things. He's a good Jedi. And they make quick work of these Sith acolytes, and 4 of these Jedi end up remaining, and I thought that this was such a cool story. I thought this was by far the best episode, and I thought it was well thought out, well written. I thought everything about this episode worked. This episode is a 10 out of 10 for me. Moving on to the 6th episode, and this one's going to be a little short and sweet because, to be honest, this is my second least favorite. This is by far my second least favorite episode, and honestly, it's almost kind of bordering on least favorite, but there is a part of this episode that does save it a little bit, and this episode is called TOB1, and it's about a cybernetic boy who dreams of being a Jedi, discovers a dangerous truth about his creator, and I could not get into this episode. I could very much tell that this episode was very catered to kids. If there is any episode in this entire first season that would be catered to a kid, it's this episode right here. And I'm glad it was a little shorter on the short note too, because I just could not get into the first, I'd say 10 minutes of this episode until the last 5 or so minutes comes in, and we find out that this little droid boy, this cybernetic kid, has to fight an Inquisitor. And I thought that was pretty cool of them bringing Inquisitors in like that. He ends up defeating the Inquisitor, and I thought that fight was actually pretty dope, I'm not gonna lie, and that's what kind of saved this episode for me. But that's all I gotta really say about this episode. There's nothing more to say about that. Now, moving on to the 7th episode, The Elder. This episode is my second favorite episode. I really like this one. It's about a Jedi and his Padawan who pursue a dark and powerful presence. And essentially, you can see, I think a lot of people have seen pictures of this episode, and it's this Jedi and his Padawan, which, by the way, the Jedi, voiced by David Harbour, who you may know from Marvel fame and Stranger Things fame, he does a good job in this episode, but essentially the plot is that he and his Padawan have to go and find this presence that they feel through the Force on this planet, and they end up finding out that it is a long-lost Sith member. And I think what makes this episode so interesting is how they play on the fact of power and how much your power is not going to last forever, no matter what side you're on, whether it's on the light side or the dark side. And in the end, this Elder, who is the Sith, he does get defeated by the Master Jedi, not the Padawan. He actually ends up defeating the Padawan, not killing him, but defeating him in battle. And the Jedi Master is the one who defeats the Elder and kills him. And he essentially talks about how, because of his age, that's the reason I was able to defeat him. And I thought that was a really interesting premise that made for an interesting story in this episode. And so that really just made for it being my second favorite episode. So moving on into the 8th episode, we're now into the final 2. This one is called Lop and Ocho, and it's about a family who is torn about what to do when the Empire encroaches on their planet. Now, this is also, to me, in the lower tier of episodes. I don't really, to be honest, know what happened in this episode. I honestly kind of was losing my focus a little bit. There's the main character is essentially a different species and is taken up by this other family who is, I'm pretty sure they're just human, and is taken up. They adopt her and they take her into this family, and she's kind of drawn into family drama that splits this family apart. And in the end, it creates this battle between these families, from the Empire side and from the Republic side, and ultimately that's essentially the whole premise of the episode. Again, not much really happened here, even if it was one of the longer episodes in the entire season. I thought this was definitely in the bottom half. Not a bad episode, it was just okay, you know, not the greatest thing in the world. And now we've reached the final episode, which this episode for me can range from maybe third to fourth weakest in my humble opinion. And it's about a Jedi who returns to his forbidden love to help defend her kingdom from a Sith-like shogun. This one is a shorter one as well, and I kind of wish it was longer a little bit. I think it being as short as it was actually kind of hindered it. And essentially, this Jedi is trying to protect his Padawan, I believe it is, this girl, and he is essentially very clouded. This is basically an Anakin story. This Jedi who's very clouded by many things going on around him, and he has to fight this shogun, and this shogun is very powerful. She's kind of like the emperor in a way, and she's able to get a hold of him and basically turn him to the dark side and make him her Padawan, and basically leaves this girl behind, and the episode ends. And I was like, wait, that's it? I honestly kind of wish it went on a little longer. Again, not a bad episode, but just okay for the most part. I didn't really think too much of this. And so, with that being said, honestly, I don't really got much more to say about this season. I think, overall, this was a good way to start off. If you were to start off doing something new with your IP, which again is Star Wars, and the fact that you've never done anime before, I think this is actually a pretty decent way to start off with it. Overall, if I had to give season 1, because from the looks of it, we may get more stories, we may get more seasons. I definitely think we might get a season 2, just because for the most part, the majority of people are really liking this series so far, which is good. And I appreciate that. I thoroughly enjoyed it myself, and I was able to binge through it, and I'm glad that they released this in a binge format. I think this definitely needed to be released through binge format. I think if it had been released through week to week, I think it might have made it a little bit lackluster as far as how I perceived it each episode. So I'm glad that they did this through binge. I think a series like this definitely needs binge, whereas a series like Mandalorian, that should be week to week. So I really liked it. And overall, my verdict for this season, if I had to give a grade, I think I would go an 8.5 out of 10. Again, I really did enjoy this season so far. This was a solid season. An 8.5 I think is the highest that I would give it. More good episodes than not so good. Again, I think ultimately, to me, I think there were only 2 episodes that were essentially not good. I just think that the second episode and then the 6th episode, I think those 2 were the ones that were the weakest and not really good episodes. So that's really all I had to say as far as negatives. Everything else about this episode I either thought was decent, great, and I can't say much more other than that. I hope we get a second season. So, guys, thank you guys so much for tuning into this review of Star Wars Visions. I really enjoyed the series again. Please comment down below. What did you guys think again? I want to hear your guys' thoughts. And as always, please keep it respectful. And like, comment, and subscribe, of course, if you enjoy this video and you are new to the channel. And I will see you guys all in the next video. Okay, peace out, everybody.